Getting Schooled is a podcast hosted by Fox Nation's Abby. Wherever you are, make it Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome to Spirit's Journey, coming to you live on Truth Frequency Radio and simulcast on Wholeness Talk Radio. Your hosts are Patrick and Kathryn Andries.
Join us each week as we explore a wide range of metaphysical topics such as dreams, astrology, intuitive readings, and life purpose. You'll receive practical guidance so that you can live your most awesome life.
Learn more about what we do at intuitiveschool.com and connect with us on Facebook at Spirit's Journey Radio.
Welcome to Spirit's Journey. We are coming to you live on Truth Frequency Radio and simulcast on Wholeness Talk Radio, among others. For instance, you can find us on iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and TalkStream Live. We are here in the Heartland, holding the energy for spiritual truth and awareness. I'm Patrick.
I'm Kathryn. Welcome, everyone.
Well, today we're very excited to have a longtime friend, Paul Madar, on. Paul has studied metaphysics for over 23 years and has taught throughout the Midwest. He's taught concentration and meditation, self-improvement to hundreds of students. He trained extensively to be a conductor of intuitive reading and received multiple readings pointing to being a bridge for others to know their own inner and outer nature. Most recently, though, Paul has embraced Abraham's philosophies and also been tutoring high school and college students for exam preparation, incorporating ancient mind skills in their training. All this is available through paulmadar.com, and he continues practicing inner-level journeying, shamanic techniques, and wholeness integration. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, thank you very much for having me on.
Oh, well, we're very excited to talk to you. We haven't talked to you in some time, and really looking forward to all the interesting things that you're into right now. So could you just start out maybe talking a little bit about how you got into metaphysics? What interested you about metaphysics?
Oh, wow. That goes way back. Without giving away my age,
Yeah.
I started getting interested when I was about 12 or 13 years old, and I discovered the Edgar Cayce books on my parents' shelf. Fortunately, my parents had kind of a metaphysical library, and I got to pull those books off and read through those, things about ancient Egypt and things about Atlantis and about astral projection and all kinds of cool stuff. And I really wanted to learn as much as possible. So that got my interest up, and I just started experimenting with metaphysical principles, everything from yoga to breathing techniques. And then eventually I really wanted to be Edgar Cayce. I really wanted to do those readings that Edgar Cayce did, and took a trip out to the ARE Institute in Virginia, and met Hughlin Cayce, his son, and that just thrilled me to pieces. Took a tour of their library there, and I thought, man, this is it. This is what I want to spend my life doing, is studying and learning metaphysics. Never thought about teaching, though. that was not in the picture. But that pretty soon that became part of the picture.
So you got into ARE and studying about Atlantis. Now, some people might consider Atlantis a little out there, and we've done some research on Atlantis through our readings too. So how, like in the early days, before you really started teaching and doing the readings, how did you feel about Atlantis when you were first learning about it? Did you just have this kind of inner sense like, oh yeah, there's really something here? How did you know to keep following that path?
Well, I got more and more interested in it as I went through high school and even into college. And at college, I had access to some really good libraries and research system. And I started approaching it from a more of a scientific side, because I was a biology major at a really good school. And I wanted to see if I could find proof of Atlantis. And lo and behold, there's actually quite a bit of evidence and proof if you look at the scientific record, like the archaeological record, the paleontological record. So I really wanted to establish a bed of facts and data that I could point to when I started giving lectures and started telling people about it. But in the back of my mind, the entire time was this very strong belief that, yes, of course it happened. It explains so much. But I really felt that I needed that grounding of evidence.
So then you eventually got into actually doing readings about Atlantis. So how did that journey happen?
That happened through the school that I attended for a number of years, and you're very familiar with it too, and Kathryn is. And lo and behold, I discovered that they had been doing Atlantean readings for years, and they had found all of this esoteric Akashic research evidence of Atlantis, very personal readings, about this person was a stone carver, and this person worked with ships, and this person did this and that. And so it was very personal based. And through reading a lot of those reports, like hundreds of those reports, I started piecing together a really organic picture of what Atlantis was about, what the time period was about, how it related with Egypt, how it related with the Mayan civilization, and the Chinese civilization and the Tibetans, and how all of it linked together in those time periods, in those cycles of Atlantis. So it became very real, very, very real in my mind through those intuitive research projects.
One of the things I was always fascinated by when I was looking at past life readings is a big complaint I remember people talking about is that it seemed like everybody was Cleopatra. And so
Right.
Obviously only one person could have been Cleopatra, right? Because that was one person's past lifetime. So how could everybody who walks out of the psychic fair be Cleopatra or somebody like that?
Actually, I think there were about 12 Cleopatras, really. Like there were, no, really. I have to find the evidence for that again, but I came across some research that said several, lesser princesses were named Cleopatra afterwards, just to sort of honor her. So yeah, there's maybe a dozen Cleopatras.
Oh, okay. So they might have been a lesser Cleopatra.
Right. The real Cleopatra. Yeah.
Not the Cleopatra.
Yeah, I saw the same thing too. Yeah.
But that was the thing that always fascinated me because the readings that we learned through the School of Metaphysics originally, like when we were studying past lifetimes and stuff like that, the Atlantis readings weren't brought up on purpose. It was just, sometimes people would have one and it just happened to be in Atlantis.
Right.
But most people were just ordinary, average people, which is what you would expect because a lot of people were farmers. They might have been merchants. They might have been, the equivalent of the modern day banker back then or something like that. And so people were just kind of living their lives. I even had one in the Civil War and different things like that came up. But the other thing that always really impacted me was not what I was doing in the past lifetime or what the other person was doing, but it's always been the significance, like how that past life related to the present lifetime. So do you have any particular lifetimes or anything that stand out that were kind of pivotal for you?
Oh, actually, just about every report that I've had. There have been a couple of boring ones when I was in a boring patch in my life, but just about every one was pivotal in some way. It clicked and pulled together information and pulled together things I needed to clarify at the time and just really helped tremendously at those points, at those junctures. That's typically when somebody comes to want a reading also, whether it's a tarot reading or it's an astrological reading or it's a numerology or it's a intuitive report. It's when they're facing a transition point in their life, a punctuation mark in their life, and they don't quite know which way to go, what to choose. It can be a positive set of choices that they're looking at, or it can be, how do I get out of this relationship, or how do I heal this? But that's what I've seen overall people have in common. So I've had a lot of those moments in my life, and that's when I turned to intuitive reports. And we've done that for our kids as well. When they've been sick, or when they've had mysterious things going on with them, or when we just wanted guidance for our kids, as to what to teach them, how to teach them, what are the most important things to teach, and what to focus on at this age and what to focus on at that age. And it's been incredibly helpful to get that guidance.
Yeah, Paul, I can totally relate where, there's been times in my life when I'm at a crossroads, and what the readings have done for me is shown me, well, this is what you did in the past, and you can take a similar route, which is going to be the comfortable route, or you can do the one that's a little bit more challenging that you're afraid to do. And so I think that's how the readings can help people evolve, so we don't just keep going around in circles doing the same thing, but we make a different choice.
Right. And I'm sure you've covered Dharma and Karma on your show at some point. And I think that ties in with somebody's fork in the road decision process is, do I follow my Dharma, which is a deep set of understandings that you have of how the universe works, how I'm put together, how I feel my sense of destiny moving, or your sense of karma, which is what you've been avoiding, trying not to do, trying to run away from, or turn a blind eye to. And that's kind of the set of forks that we're presented with each time is, do I turn towards learning and growth, or do I kind of take the easier way away from learning and growth? And that doesn't mean difficulty, that you have to always choose difficulty. It means choosing expansion, choosing to grow into consciousness and become more self-aware. And I think those reports constantly give you those insights. They never tell you what to do, but they tell you, well, if you chose this way, you'd have a little bit more insight. You'd have a little bit more growth afforded to you.
Now
and so, Paul, what would you say is some of the most compelling evidence that you found about the existence of Atlantis?
Well, that's a really good question. I've found through those very personal reports that I came across, which I want to talk about further in a minute, but by piecing together and sort of cross-referencing that matrix of personal accounts, I found a very cohesive story of Atlantis. And then I would cross-check that with the Edgar Cayce story of Atlantis, and that would corroborate. And then I would cross-check that with some other sources of readings, and that would cross-reference. So more than anything, it was the cross-referencing, creating this cohesive timeline, this cohesive story of Atlantis that really put it together. And then, of course, comparing that to Plato's accounts from his great uncle. That was one of the original sources of the story of Atlantis that people compare all of these other newer sources to. So it's a giant body of evidence that gets cross-referenced that really seals the deal for me.
Excellent.
So,
wow.
I was curious. I wanted to step back just a second, because when you were talking about karma, I know a lot of people have this idea that karma is always bad, that, if you do something wrong, karma's going to get you. And so we found, too, that karma doesn't always act like that. In fact, I believe the word relates back to the idea of the wheel, that it's like your thoughts go out and then they're going to come back to you. But the karma is really when you have a misunderstanding, so it could actually be maybe not being able to receive. So then your karma is for people to keep giving things to you so that you start to feel comfortable receiving. So, most people won't consider that a bad thing. So what's your experience been with karma in that regard?
I think originally I had that misinterpretation too. And then over the years, I started seeing that karma really is neutral. It's like a force of the universe that ensures that bit by bit you become more aware of thought being the causal element of your life. And that is the key pivotal point of waking up, really, is that what I think, that's what I'm creating. Whether that's a habitual set of thoughts or whether that's a conscious thought. And karma gently nudges you, or sometimes smacks you, towards that realization that thought is cause. And so that's a neutral force. But it's always based on your own thinking patterns, and it's always based on your own intentions. So how can you go wrong with that? It's all self-driven. It's all under your roof. It's all in your house. It's all emanating from you and then returning to you. As I think it's a beautiful system. It's not something terrible and bad that you got to escape your karma, or you have to wipe out your karma or kill your karma. Or, yeah, but I think a lot of people have that idea in the beginning. Karma bad, dharma good.
Right.
So.
Right, and I think dharma is a word that's not as commonly known, so it, in some ways is better because karma has been used so much. There's so many misinterpretations, but dharma is a little bit cleaner in terms of it hasn't been circulated so much, so I think the definition is a little bit more clear. And going along those lines of, thought is cause, when I was researching Atlantis years ago, I found that every time one of the cycles was coming to an end, it was because there was this clash between the scientific community and those who were in the more spiritual realms. And so what parallels do you see today with what's going on between science and spirituality clashing?
Oh, that's a great question. In fact, that's really the basis for why Christine and I are focusing on Atlantean reports. I mean, we've in our wheelhouse, we've got a lot of different reports. We do creativity reports, we do past lives, we do crossings, we do health analyses. But our favorite is the Atlantean resonance reports, because we have found over and over that when an Atlantean lifetime comes up for somebody, there is a resonance across time and space to a point at which this person was starting to forget their wholeness, their sense of connectedness with all of the universe and universal forces. That happened at the time of Atlantis. As a group, as a whole, as humanity, that's when, especially the fourth cycle of Atlantis was the period about 10,000 BC, was right about when humanity as a group was losing touch with the sense of unity, of wholeness with creative forces, and starting really to get submerged in this idea of individuality and separateness, separate ego, separate identity, separate body, separate everything. And we've been on this journey of separateness and individualization for 10,000, 12,000 years now. And at this point, we are starting to regain our sense of connectedness and wholeness. So the Atlantean Resonance Report arcs across that 12,000-year span or more and says, okay, at that time you were starting to forget your wholeness, but you still had a sense of your wholeness, and now you're starting to regain your wholeness, and you're letting go of that identity of separateness. So that's why it's so important for these reports that we feel, and they're so pivotal for people on their journey of waking up, on their journey of coming into closer alignment with universal forces and consciousness.
So these readings
that answers your question.
Oh yeah, that was an awesome answer. And so you call your readings the quantum insight reports, and so does that have any kind of difference than like the Edgar Cayce style of reading that Edgar Cayce did, or some of the readings that we did early on in our metaphysical studies?
As far as I understand, Edgar Cayce really didn't know what he was doing consciously. He just kind of stumbled across this process. He fell asleep on his books and found out that he learned everything in the books and somehow absorbed it. And then he put his hand on his head one day and found that he could give health readings or past life readings for people. So it was a very unconscious kind of maneuver for him. So we decided to call ours quantum insight. First of all, it's tremendous insight, but also because it's based in scientific principles of quantum physics. and which has become a conscious body of science now. So we wanted to give that element, or that at least the name implies that element of this is science and its insight together, because it is based on a quantifiable connection across time and space. It's bringing that shamanic kind of inner level journey system into a repeatable, scientifically based quantum universe explanation.
So the significance.
Plus the initials. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Plus, well, I was going to say, plus the initials are really cool too. QI.
Oh.
So.
Yeah.
We like that as well.
Yeah. So the significance of the readings is something that's probably a lot different than most people are used to, because some people may be familiar with past life regressions or some kind of a past life reading they may have gotten at a fair or something like that. And so it seems to me like a lot of times when you get into the significance of why one lifetime showed up, that, we were talking about karma earlier. So it seems like the past life readings a lot of times bring up an individual's karma. And so when you're talking about the Atlantis readings and how that's really bringing up that point of what metaphysicists sometimes call the point of entrapment, where we're becoming physical and we're really forgetting that we're interconnected with everything. And so that does seem like a really key point right now. So what happens, like when you do a past life reading, do you sometimes just get a spontaneous Atlantis reading also during those times?
Yeah, we have. It's, and almost always, I can't really say always because I haven't really compiled the data, but almost always an Atlantean report spontaneously coming through for somebody comes from somebody already having done a fair bit of work in waking themselves up, if you were. Like they've already done some mindfulness training. They're working in metaphysics, or they're doing some healing work, or they're doing something like, it's not just, and any Joe Schmo off the street gets an Atlantean report as a significant past life, because that significance really looks at the resonance of waking up versus forgetting in consciousness. So that's why we decided to hone in on those, because it looks at that waking up, forgetting in consciousness, and also they're just amazing. They're just the coolest things. Anytime that it spontaneously came up while we were sitting in on somebody else's session, everybody would lean forward and they'd sort of sit upright and like, oh, this is going to be a good story now. When it says, we see this one in ancient Egypt, or in fourth cycle Atlantis, everyone leans in, and then everyone plugs their ears when they say, when the conductor or the reporter says, and we see this one to be called, because sometimes the names are very unique, very, very bizarre, especially in earlier Atlantean times. An individual not necessarily was built as an individual. Sometimes they were called a collective. I hate to say the word Borg, but kind of like a good Borg.
Yeah.
Where they were, this was one of three, or this was one of 100 individuals, but they moved as a collective. They moved as a group, and they were known as a group. And sometimes they were known as we had one the other night that was. We see this one to be called, and that was it. Like a wind blowing through. And the way that yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, well, it was the way that people would identify each other at that time was more based on your vibrational energy, right? Instead of kind of a traditional naming system.
How you move through the world, or how you race around, or how you move very slowly and deliberately. That could be given a sound if you wanted to, a vibrational quality. Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of how some of the Native Americans name some of their young as they're born, the particular energy that they had as they were coming into the world, and then that would relate to their names. So I think there's a lot of
or
there.
or maybe how they moved as they grew up. Then they become known as walking bear because they kind of move like a bear, or they're fierce like a hawk, or yeah.
So when you were doing an Atlantean, so when you're doing an Atlantic reading for somebody, have you ever had it come up and say, we don't see this one in the time period of Atlantis?
No, and I really doubt that I would come across no, they weren't there, because I think all of us were there. That it was just part of our timeline that we all went through that passage. However, not everyone was a healer in a temple, or Cleopatra, or not everyone was a great priest, or doing something fantastic back then. They might have just been cutting stone, or they might have just been fishing. So you can still find that lifetime. However, if somebody comes to us and initiates an Atlantean reading, they found us, they think it's really cool, they're gonna pay the money to have this report done. Chances are they've already done some work over a number of years to prepare themselves to even come across us in the first place, let alone believe that we have something for them. So that's kind of the portal door that they cross through.
All right. Well, that's the signal that we are coming up on our break. And so we're going to be going into a short break. During the break, please check out Spirit's Journey page on tfrlive.com. And this is Spirit's Journey on Truth Frequency Radio and Wholeness Talk Radio. We'll see you on.
Real people, real radio.
Initiating the truth frequency.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
We are back from the break. If you are just joining us, this is Spirit's Journey with Patrick and Kathryn Andries, coming to you live on Truth Frequency Radio and Wholeness Talk Radio. We're here today with Paul Madar. So, Paul, before the break, I was wanting to let you plug your site so people, if they want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Well, I have two sites. One is paulmadar.com, and that's really geared for coaching. It's applied metaphysics to coaching for high schoolers and college students. And then the other, which is the Intuitive Report site, is called Quantum Insight Co. What is that? QuantumInsight.co is the website. We just started a new website, QuantumInsight.co. So that's the one for Atlantean resonance reports.
Great,
yes,
Paul.
I just confirmed that.
You mentioned that you do coaching for kids, and so I'm curious, in the field of education, because I've been teaching for many years, how do you weave in the metaphysics to help kids, whether it's improve their test scores, concentration, sense of balance, all those things that Western education doesn't teach them but are so needed today?
Yeah, I started with doing ACT coaching, with doing tutoring for the ACT exam. And I kind of played it by the book with coaching for a while, not really knowing how to venture into the territory of metaphysics with students. And I thought, well, they didn't really sign up for metaphysics, so I'm not going to, teach them all this metaphysics stuff. I'm just going to teach them how to do the English grammar and editing and math and science and reading and some writing. But bit by bit, it kept on coming up that kids had a hard time focusing and concentrating, and they had a hard time with test anxiety. Some of them a really hard time, like paralyzing anxiety when they had a standardized test coming up. And so I just naturally started saying, there's some breathing techniques we could do here, and you know what? there's this concentration exercise with a candle. Why don't we try that? So I just started just venturing delicately into these metaphysical exercises, and lo and behold, they worked beautifully on everybody, like across the board. And I thought, wow, who am I to withhold these wonderful techniques and principles and exercises just because I'm a little squeamish about maybe presenting these to people that haven't explicitly signed up for it. So I just started plunking them out there as part of my program. You will do this concentration exercise, focus exercise. We will work on memory skills explicitly, and we will do some breathing exercises. And pretty soon I started getting the reputation of, oh yeah, there's this guy who does ACT coaching and he does this weird stuff, but don't worry, you'll get a really cool score because of it. So now I've got that reputation.
I think that's a great reputation, because I think what I've discovered over the years is that people who are able to put the wording in such a way that they're not selling metaphysics outrightly, but they're weaving it in, have been able to be successful teaching business people or students. But one question I had, Paul, is how much do you think the role of food, screen time, lack of exercise plays into the difficulty today's kids have in terms of concentrating and focusing?
I actually see it. I see those related in a unique way. I see those as symptoms of lack of focus. The analogy I use oftentimes when I'm explaining focus is a little puppy dog that you've got on a leash, and you're just starting to train this puppy dog to heel, and in the beginning the puppy starts wandering off and wants to sniff everything and wants to bat at this and chase after that. And the puppy dog is really your attention. And most people have not practiced reining in their attention and given that leash a pull and saying, no, come back here, attention, my point of attention. Stay right here with me, and we're going to stay on this narrow road. Most people haven't really consciously trained themselves to be able to pull their attention together and place it where they want it. And so I use those analogies a lot of time for people to relate to, and they say, oh, yeah, that makes sense, yeah. And we go from there. Does that answer the question?
Oh yeah, I think that's a great analogy. I think you're right on. And so with I know you've homeschooled a lot your own kids, and so what do you think what needs could we add, or what do you think is needed in the current education system to kind of change things around to help kids?
I'm taking a page from the Dalai Lama. I've heard him speak several times in person. And recently I saw him on a Facebook Live, and he was talking about education. And he said the most important thing that we can do in our educational system, and he means like worldwide, humanity-wide, is incorporate teaching the mind, teaching how the mind is structured and teaching how to use the mind. Not just information. He says we're good at that, shuffling information in people. But teaching what the mind is, how the mind is structured, and how to use this mind tool to the best, like things like focus and memory and intuition, how to use that mind is now the most important thing for us to fold into an education. And that's really what Christine and I wanted to establish early on with our kids is a sense of there's you, there's your mind. Yes, you're intertwined, but you have the ability to direct your mind. You have the ability to direct your point of attention where you choose. And that's really what I also teach at a private prep school. And that's what I weave into lessons, I weave into curriculum, is the sense that you can direct your attention. You are not ADD and you are not, focus challenged. You just haven't quite practiced pulling that leash on your puppy and gotten your puppy to mind you, getting control of your point of attention and pointing it in a direction that you want.
So speaking of a puppy, continuing the analogy here, what do you think about all of these devices their kids are running around with? Because it seems like the amount of distraction is just increasing exponentially year by year.
Yeah. I think that's a symptom. So I don't think taking devices away or limiting device time or limiting computer time or screen time is really the answer. I think the answer really is teach about the mind, teach about focus and concentration, the principles of the mind. And naturally, people will recognize, I think I'm spending too much time on this screen, or they'll use the screen time differently. They won't use it as much as a distraction when they realize, I'm distracting myself now. I could be more productive. I could use my time better. I could direct my consciousness in a more productive way. So the rules and regulations on the devices and the technology, I think, is treating the symptom rather than the root of the issue, which is get control of your mind faculties and functions.
I agree with that concept, but it seems like, as a 10-year-old boy, that it would definitely be more fun just sitting around playing video games all day. I think it takes a certain level of maturity to kind of make those choices.
Yeah. Okay, Sam, do you feel like doing this video game, or do you feel like looking at a candle for 10 minutes? A video game, man.
Yeah.
Now, here's another thing, though. If you're conscious about it, when you do gaming, I think you're actually building focus and you're actually building concentration. I mean, I've seen some of these kids that are tremendously focused and exceptionally directed. So, the screen time isn't always a distraction. If you use it as a distraction, then it's a distraction. But if you use it as something that you love to focus on and you love the feeling of a concentrated, focused mind, then you're building focus. You're building concentration. So to just across the board say, screen time is bad, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it goes back to that karma thing. It goes back to the intention behind what you're doing. It goes back to what is your goal with this? Is it to check out, or is it to build something in yourself? Like somebody could use Sudoku, in the newspaper. My mother-in-law does Sudoku, and she's really good at it. You could use that as a distraction, or you could use it as a memory device to consciously know that you're building your memory. And it really depends on what you set out for in the initial intention.
So
I think that's a really good point.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. So one thing I was going to ask about, because you talked about protecting your emotional state, and you mentioned that a lot of these students have test anxiety and things like that. So what were some things that you've learned about protecting your emotional state?
That really came from the Abraham teachings that my wife and I have been studying intensively for several years now. That really hinges on making sure that you are in a positive or at least a neutral emotional state to allow yourself to in effect tune into your desire vortex, they call it. The things that you've wanted and are on their way vibrationally but haven't quite manifested into the physical for you. In order for that passageway to remain clear, you have to stay in a positive frame of mind, of expectation, of looking forward to what's coming up for you. And so I really wanted to embrace that idea of not so much ignoring the negative things in your life, but just nudging your attention away from them and looking towards what is coming up for yourself, or what you do want to build in your life. One of the ways I do this with the kids with coaching is when they try to beat themselves up about a score on their test. I say, you know what the cure for beating yourself up is? Simply saying next time. I just have them say over and over, next time I'm going to do this, and next time I'm going to do that. So it relieves that self-denigration tendency that people have a lot, and moves you towards something productive, something constructive, and something that you do have control over, which is the next time. You can set something in motion for the next time. So that's what I mean by tending that emotional state, like a precious garden, really, like a Japanese garden, which is meticulously groomed. You just got to watch how you move your emotions and just keep on coming back to that stable center point of positive expectation and looking forward to life and this thing coming up for you.
So we're coming up here.
I love that mind diversion.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just a little nudge, it's just a little tiny adjustment in your emotions to get you on the upswing instead of on the downswing and saying, this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is not going well for me. You say, well, at least this happened, that's good. And at least that also happened. And yeah, I guess next time I could do better. And yeah, next time I'm going to plan. And you turn that corner and you start ramping up into a more positive frame of mind. And it's in Zen, I think they call it catching the arrow, where you catch yourself in the moment of doing something that you want to change, and you redirect that arrow just slightly, like you deflect that arrow just slightly, but it goes onto the trajectory that you want to achieve.
So with school coming up and so much uncertainty this year about what's going to happen, some schools are just starting out online and some are going to start out in person, but we really have no idea how long that might last because they may end up having to shut schools down again and go back online. Is there anything that you can give to the parents and the students, maybe just a couple of tips, like you were talking about some of the things that you were teaching? Is there any quick tips that you might be able to offer that somebody could use?
Ooh, yeah, that's good. I haven't really thought of that, but I think right off what I would suggest, because our girls also they're going to do 2 days in school, 1 day, I think it's online with a teacher, and then 2 days just straight online is going to be their week that they're looking at. So if I were me and I were a parent, which I am, I would suggest to me, I would suggest checking in, not hovering necessarily, but like a checking in with your student as to how they're working with their mind. If you're so inclined, if you want to build this sense of teaching the mind and teaching the mechanics of the mind and getting into that and helping your kids establish that, then I would check in with how they're doing with memory. I would check in how they might be using intuition with their courses, how they're focusing. And there's two kinds of focus. There's point focus and then there's peripheral focus. So how they might be using the two kinds of focus in their classes. So steering it more towards a discussion or a check-in, or at least monitoring how the kids are working with their emotional state, with focus, with memory, with intuition, rather than did you learn this thing, did you turn that thing in, did you finish that assignment, which just kind of perpetuates that surface learning, information learning, which we know isn't very fulfilling for kids. More and more kids are seeing that information learning is okay, but it's not very fulfilling because it really doesn't touch the soul. It doesn't enrich the soul. It kind of excites the conscious mind, maybe. Ooh, I'm learning about this math principle, or ooh, I'm learning about that history, which is cool. It's nice. It's good. It's good for a society. But for a soul, I think the fulfilling side is really development of awareness of self and development of awareness of interconnectedness with others. And I think that's what parents really can add to their check-ins with their students, with their kids.
Well, yeah, that's super helpful, Paul. And I remember learning the real definition of educate comes from the Latin word meaning pull forth. And so so much of Western education is just stuffing information down and lacks pulling out of the individual who they really are. So I think your tips were great. And, you know, with the whole virus thing going on, there's actually a lot of fear among kids about death. You know, they're hearing about it every day, the death case today, you know, mortality. And so I know you've studied a lot, obviously, death and reincarnation, and I'd be curious if you want to share your perspectives on death and how, I guess, you're working with what you call your team of advisors on the other side.
Yeah, that's an awesome concept, the team of advisors. And I've been building that over the years. At first, a long time ago, I was introduced the idea of having a guide, a spirit guide. And I thought, that's really cool. And then when I started studying shamanic principles, there was the idea of you have ancestors and you have inner level teachers available. I thought, well, how is that different than a guide? And where does my guide fit in with this? Pretty soon I started seeing that I have this pantheon of advisors available to me. And then the more I studied death, and then when my parents passed on to the other side, I really had, and that was just in the last few years, I really had a great opportunity to look at my beliefs about death and about ancestors and advisors and inner level teachers and classmates who are not incarnated. That whole world of souls, of entities that are available to us that most of us don't even know. Most of us don't even think about or don't even believe in that. Some believe in maybe angels, they'll call them angels, or they'll call it the God principle or universal forces. That doesn't matter as much as simply the belief that there are unseen forces available, or unseen advice available, or unseen insight available to us. I think the more that you study metaphysics, the more you get into reincarnation, and the more you study reincarnation, you start seeing that, man, there really is just a continuity of consciousness, and we come and we go. We blip into a body for a while, and then we blip out, and then we come back in, and then we come back out. And we've all had at least 1,000 lifetimes on this planet, in all these different forms. I've been every race. I've been every gender, and male, female, and in between. And I've been poor, and I've been rich, and I've been mean, and I've been kind and compassionate. I've been a monk, and I've been fabulously steeped in material goods. So I've done it all, and I think everybody's done it all. And when you have that perspective from reincarnation, I think it's really hard to hold anything against anybody else, and like discount them because of their race, which is so temporary, or discount them because of their income status, which is so temporary. I think it's the great leveler is reincarnation and studying that. And then
it'd definitely be a game changer, Paul, right now in terms of the whole racism talk. If we brought in the reincarnation,
yeah, I know it really would. It would be a game changer about the COVID-19 as well. The fear of death. Everything is hinging on the fear of death, and we're counting the deaths. And I might get it, and then I might die. And well, is dying really the worst thing that can happen to you? I don't think so.
Right.
Maybe
right,
prolonged
and how much
suffering.
we've been exactly, because our society with this virus is like, oh my gosh, we have to do everything possible to prevent a death, destroy the whole economy, schools, everything to prevent one possible death. When again, bringing in the idea of the soul, that I believe a soul will leave the body when it's ready. So you could have tuberculosis, and if you're not ready to leave, you're going to get over that. You know, it's not the virus is going to get you. Is it, well, are you off your purpose? Is your soul ready to leave anyway? Because it's going to find something to get out of the body.
Yeah, exactly. There's a phrase in self-growth fields that said if you're not growing, you're dying. Or there's various iterations of that. But you know, when you're green, you grow. When you're ripe, you rot. That kind of idea. So when you're looking forward to life, you're drawing in life force energy. You know, when you've got plans and great things that you're living for, you're drawing in life force energy. But when you're kind of coasting and you're kind of done with life, my mom was in this state. She was just done. She was 90 years old. Like, I don't know why I'm still here. I'm ready to check out. You know, I'd gladly go. I'd meet up with your father. And so she was not drawing in life force energy and sustaining the body. She was on a steady downhill climb. So I think that's playing out this year. We're really getting a good examination of death this year. The George Floyd death and all of that triggered. I think it's linked, though. I think all of this stuff is linked to a fear that there is not continuity of consciousness, and that's where reincarnation can be such a wonderful relief for people. Is just saying, this is one lifetime. I will come and go. I'll be back, as Arnold Schwarzenegger would say, and you can relax with that. We can harmonize with universal rhythm of life, death, rebirth, life, death, rebirth.
Well, we've got a couple of minutes here, and since you were talking about the George Floyd incident and the coronavirus being linked, I thought that was pretty interesting too, especially since George Floyd was suffocated, and the coronavirus, the problem that people have is respiratory, and this is probably the first thing that I can think of that is affecting the entire planet since probably World War II, and affecting the entire world at the same time. So since you do the health readings, can you give us just a quick insight? What might be the global thought connection with a respiratory condition like this?
Yeah, it's a fascinating phenomenon going on. What is the slogan of the protest? They started out with "I can't breathe," which was George Floyd's last words, and now wearing this mask, which I have to do a lot. I have a hard time breathing. So yeah, it comes back to that respiratory thing. I can't breathe, and the COVID-19 is a respiratory ailment. If you look at it in terms of the universal language of mind, which is the dream language or the shamanic language, respiratory restriction has to do with how we are holding ourselves back from experiencing a connection with all. So what do you do when you breathe? You're breathing in this air that is everywhere. So it's a way of drawing in universal life force.
All right. Well, that is a great note to end this on. And thank you so much, Paul, for being here with us. We love having you all with us. If you want to see Paul, you can go to paulmadar.com or quantuminsight.co. This is Spirit's Journey with Patrick and Kathryn Andries.